Hi everyone, and welcome to another marvelous video. When it comes to Superman's list of foes, General Zod certainly makes it to the higher ranks. Created by Robert Bernstein and George Papp, the character was first showcased in Adventure Comics issue 283, which was released in April 1961. Like Superman, Zod is also a Kryptonian, but completely opposite in terms of moral codes. While characters like Doomsday and Metallo are severe threats, Zod takes it up a notch higher, serving as a personal rival, hailing from the same planet. Interestingly, this character had different iterations from different creators as they fell into place within DC's alternate realities. In this video, we will be exploring 17 major alternate versions of General Zod. So, without any further delay, let us begin. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. General Dru-Zod. General Dru-Zod was the first iteration of the character showcased in Adventure Comics issue 283. Hailing from Krypton, he was a military officer who orchestrated a coup against the Science Council of Krypton. He made bizarro clones of himself to execute his plan. However, his attempts to overthrow the Council from ruling Krypton were unsuccessful, and the Council banished General Dru-Zod to the Phantom Zone. This version of Zod, created by Robert Bernstein and George Papp, was later showcased in Adventures of Superman issue 444, released in 1988. This was the revamp of the DC timeline known as the New 52. The Time Trapper had created the Pocket Universe in order to control the Legion of Superheroes. It was later designated Earth 23 and had a few similar events to that of Earth 1. Like in this reality, Lex grew up admiring Superboy from Smallville, but unlike Earth, the two never met. Hence, they never became friends. Nor did Lex face the accident at his lab. After the prolonged absence of Superboy, when the Kents revealed that he was their son and assumed death, Lex arrived at Smallville to express his true feelings for the loss of Superman. There he met Lana Lang and Pete Ross and offered his help to find Superboy. Lex used Superboy's The Time Viewer, which accidentally opened up to the Phantom Zone, releasing Zod, Zora, and Quetzal. They disguised themselves as Van-El, his wife Mara, and brother-in-law Stone R, and called the place the Survivor Zone for the Kryptonians who managed to survive their planet's destruction. Dru-Zod helped Lex build the Phantom Zone, but then revealed their true colors by destroying the projector and Superboy's lab. Zod and his associates terrorized Earth and called themselves the rulers of the planet. They killed anyone who stood in their way, but that did not stop Lex from building his line of defense. He created his version of Supergirl, who could give them a fighting chance. Meanwhile, Zod, believing that humans no longer deserved to live, and his associates destabilized the Earth's core, causing the atmosphere to collapse immediately. In his last resort, Lex sent Supergirl to contact Superman from another reality for help. Zod arrived at Smallville Citadel, killing Lex's every lie of defense. Supergirl returned with Superman, but Zod melted Supergirl into a puddle of protoplasm. Superman used the help of gold kryptonite to depower Zod, Zora, and Quetzal and capture them in Superboy's remaining lab. The three of them were exposed to high-intensity radiation of green kryptonite and killed. Their remnants were buried in the Pocket Universe. Dru-Zod proved to be an extremely powerful foe for Superman. Zod-El, Earth 1. Earth 1 had a different version of General Zod named Zod-El, who orchestrated the decimation of planet Krypton himself. From creators J. Michael Straczynski and Ardian Syaf, the character was introduced in 2015's Superman Earth 1 issue 3. Zod-El's story began with the coup he organized against the Science Council of Krypton, like most of his incarnations. His actions led to a 6-month-long civil war, which ended with the defeat of Zod-El and his associates. They were forced to flee from the planet in order to avoid arrest, following which Zod and his followers allied with one of Krypton's greatest enemies and provided them with the means to destroy Krypton. The planet was destroyed, and after several years, Zod arrived on Earth to find Superman. He managed to convince Superman that he was a survivor of Krypton and arrived on Earth to help, but instead, he reached out to the world's government to extend his help in dealing with Superman, who was then feared feared by most. Zod planned to kill Superman with the help of some long-saved kryptonite while he was in his protective suit. When the confrontation happens, Superman outsmarts Zod and destroys his protective suit, thereby making him seal the kryptonite from exposure. However, Zod was far from giving up, and following Superman to his apartment in Metropolis, he made his second attempt. However, this time, he had Lex behind him, who neutralized Superman with a red frequency gun. Zod got the better of Superman and relentlessly tortured him until he was bored. However, when Superman slowly began regaining his powers, Zod planned to finally eliminate him. Before he could deliver his final blow, Lisa, in a desperate attempt, drove a heavy truck at Zod and saved Superman momentarily. It was no big deal for Zod, who quickly recovered and charged at Superman. However, Lex switched sides and fired his red frequency gun at Zod to give Superman a fighting chance. Angered, Zod planned to kill Lex first before Alexandra Luthor completely killed him. General Zod, Man of Steel 2013. 2013's Man of Steel showcased a version of General Zod who was depicted as the first enemy faced by Clark after accepting his true heritage of being a Kryptonian, and hence Superman. Played by American actor and musician Michael Shannon, this live-action version of General was one of the best in-depth depictions of the character. He was a warrior whose loyalty towards Krypton was slightly different from that of Jor-El and his Science Council. On Krypton, Zod was born in the huge capital megacity of Kandor, where he was genetically engineered in a Genesis chamber to become a leader and fierce warrior. He served the Warrior Guild on Krypton and eventually rose to the rank of a general. Having been known for keeping Kandor safe, this version of Zod had respect and admiration amongst his people, and was also on good terms with Jor-El of the Science Guild. Jor-El and Zod shared a bond of friendship and eventually had the same purpose of finding ways to revitalize Krypton. However, despite having common goals, the two had completely different visions in achieving them. While Jor-El put his faith in science, Zod wanted to achieve it through force and dubious eugenics. Zod believed that the Council of Five was too weak to run their race and wanted to take charge of Krypton. He arrived at the legislation chamber with a handful of his men where Jor-El was in session. He killed High Eminence Rozar and informed Jor-El of his plans. Jor-El considered Zod's plans crazy, which was how the rift between the two friends occurred. Zod asked his soldiers to take away Jor-El, following which his second-in-command, Faora Ul, took over. Faora Ul took the members of the council into custody. Jor-El stole the Growth Codex and escaped to the House of El Citadel. He and his wife, Lara Lor-Van, planned to send their child, Kal-El, away from their dying planet with the Growth Codex. However, Zod followed Jor-El to his residence and confronted him. The two fought, while Lara managed to launch Kal-El's spaceship. Jor-El and Zod fought, with the latter killing his friend. The act broke him down as well, following which the Loyalist forces arrested him and his followers. Zod and his associates were placed on trial and sentenced to a 300-year-long banishment in the Phantom Zone. Eventually, Krypton's core gave up, and the planet was destroyed. The ripple effect of its destruction broke the boundaries of the Phantom Zone, allowing Zod and his men to escape from it. Zod and his men, upon returning from the Phantom Zone, found their planet destroyed and searched the universe for surviving Kryptonian colonies. He found a few dead colonies and a dead world engine, which he took along with him. Zod finally picked up a Kryptonian beacon and followed it to Earth. At the same time on Earth, Kal-El began getting used to his powers and embraced his heritage and life. Zod arrived on Earth and threatened the world governments to give him Kal-El to avoid catastrophic outcomes of his wrath. Kal-El, aka Clark, upon receiving the message, complied and surrendered himself to Zod. Superman and Lois were both taken into the ship Black Zero, which nullified Superman's abilities. Zod captured and restrained him while revealing his plans. Fortunately, Lois Lane brought Jor-El's AI, which helped her escape and also inhibited the effect of Black Zero that nullified Superman's powers. Superman managed to free himself and save Lois, but Zod's threat was not over yet. Zod tracked Kal-El's ship and arrived at Smallville to obtain the Codex. They found the ship, but the Codex was missing, and it infuriated Zod. He was about to strike down Martha when Superman charged at full speed, crashing him in downtown Smallville. Zod's visor was damaged, and he was struggling to get used to Earth's atmosphere and the yellow sun. Fiora and another of Zod's soldiers took up the fight with Superman. After a long ensuing battle, which is indeed one of the best superhero action sequences to date, Kal-El emerged victorious, and Kryptonian villains had to leave for their Black Zero. Zod learned that the Codex was never inside Kal-El's ship, but inside his body, and his next plan was to extract it. Soon, the world engines were placed on different parts of the planet, which began converting Earth into Krypton. Superman and the US government became allies, and together they managed to stop the raft. After the world engines were destroyed with the other Kryptonians dead, Zod and Superman faced one-on-one, and the long battle ended with Superman killing Zod by snapping his neck. Zod Superman 1978. Next, we have Zod from the Superman series, directed by Richard Donner, played by Terrence Stamp. He was introduced in the first installment of the film series released in December 1978. This version of Zod, along with his Kryptonians Ursa and Non, were marked as criminals making attempts to overthrow the Kryptonian government and take over the planet. They were dealt with by Jor-El, who banished them into the Phantom Zone. Sometime later, an explosion in space shattered the portal enclosing the Phantom Zone, which ultimately helped the seal off Kryptonians. Zod and his associates arrived in the solar system, immediately gaining powers from the yellow sun. Upon arriving on Earth, Zod realized that Jor-El's son Kal-El was living under the disguise of Superman. Zod quickly took control of the United States. He made the White House the base of his operations and allied with criminal mastermind Lex Luthor. Lex informed Zod about Superman's attachment to Lois Lane and also the location of his Fortress of Solitude. Superman and Zod faced each other in a long, fierce battle that nearly destroyed the entire metropolis. The final confrontation took place inside the Fortress of Solitude, where Superman tricked the three Kryptonians into entering a special red sun chamber. With their powers neutralized, they were unable to fight, and Superman finished Zod by throwing him into a deep catacomb, where he fell down without being able to fly. Val-Zod Earth 2. Hailing from the reality of Earth 2, this version of Zod eventually became a pacifist and the second Kryptonian to take upon the mantle of Superman. Created by Tom Taylor, Nicola Scott, and Robson Rocha, Val-Zod was introduced in Earth 2 issue 19, released in March 2014. Unlike the story of Zod that we are familiar with, Val-Zod was the last of his house after Krypton's court executed his parents on Krypton. He was a friend of a fellow orphan, Kara Zor-El. During the final days of Krypton, Val, along with Kara and Kal-El, were helped to escape by Jor-El and Lara and sent away from the dying planet in escape pods. During Val's journey, he was educated by the knowledge recorded in his capsule by his deceased parents, which spoke of avoiding a life of violence. When he landed on Earth, he was found by Terry Sloan, who captured him in the name of protection and kept him recluse from the world. Zod helped Terry in developing the Fire Pits. In this reality, there was no Justice League, but a team of 8 superheroes named the Wonders of the World. However, the team's effort fell short against the might of Steppenwolf's invasion, which also brought the end of Kal-El. Following this, the Darkseid created a clone of Kal-El with all powers and named him Brutal. He unleashed the clone to bring wrath upon Earth, and soon the entire planet was under apocalyptic invasion. A team of new Wonders was created, and they managed to find Val-Zod and ask him for his help. They have freed Val-Zod, who initially struggled to adjust to the world outside, but thanks to Lois, he was slowly adapting to the yellow sun. During one of his attempts to learn to fly, he was spotted and attacked by a horde of parademons, led by Brutal. Fortunately, Val, Lois, and Hawkgirl were saved by Green Lantern. During the final confrontation against Brutal, Val-Zod emerged victorious, eradicating the clone. Taking upon the title of Superman, Val aided the Wonders in reclaiming Earth from apocalypse. They took the battle to Darkseid, where they encountered many other clones of Superman being manufactured by Desaad. Soon, a depowered Kal-El was rescued, and Batman's electromagnetic pulses neutralized the clones. Desaad planned to launch the Red Avatar against them, but Clark connected himself to the entire network, used his blood to poison the system, and made the Red Avatar attack Desaad and the clones. In the process, he sacrificed himself. However, the long battle destroyed Earth after the terraformer fell to Earth. The planet met its end with Val, Kara, and the other heroes managing to save as many people as possible. They were teleported to an unknown planet by Telos, who had intentions of making heroes from different planets fight each other. With the help of Deimos, Val and the rest managed to escape from the Earth, but he too was evil and tried destroying them. Finally, with the help of Brainiac, they were saved and sent to a new Earth 2. On this new planet, peace was restored and societies were rebuilt. Val and Kara began dating, but it ended after an argument over Clark's death. Avruskin. Showcased in Action Comics issue 779, released in July 2001, Avruskin was the human child born to two Russian cosmonauts. Yet, to give birth to the child, the two scientists faced a crisis in space while building a space station in orbit during the Cold War. During the process, the space station faced a heavy meteor shower, which exposed the two of them to high-intensity radiation. They survived, but after returning to Earth, the mother died after giving birth to young Avruskin, while the father was terribly mutilated. The Soviet Union took hold of the child and gave him the name Zed. Young Zed was experimented upon by them. While yellow sunlight made Zed terribly weak, red sunlight gave him incredible powers and abilities. Zed grew up in captivity, where he was only allowed to read and write letters to his father. He grew stronger with age and even trained with the KGB. Zed eventually learned about Superman's existence and that the Soviet government was lying to him about his father being alive. He began growing obsessed with Superman, believing that the two of them were unique and exact opposites. One day while meditating, Zed's mind came in contact with Druzad of the Pocket Universe. Planning to take up Zod's name and defeat Superman, Zed built a suit of red armor that could filter sunlight and give him the conditioning of being in red sunlight. Seizing control over the former Soviet satellite state of Pokolistan to bring back Fiora and Ignition to be his loyal warriors. Finally, Zed was ready to be the new Zod and orchestrated plans to destroy Superman and conquer the world. New Zod's first step was to poison Superman with kryptonite. Under his instructions, Fiora hired the mercenary La Encantadora to kiss Superman and infect him with a kryptonite-based microbe. The plan was successful, but Superman eventually became weak. He even began growing green and finally collapsed after saving Lois from being kidnapped. Zod next hired Deathstroke to eliminate La Encantadora and remove all evidence of his act. However, La Encantadora allied with Superman's friends to cure him and bring him back to health. Meanwhile, Zod created a wild homicidal monster named Cancer from the extracted kryptonite tumor. Zod became the unidentified ruler of Pokolistan and eventually ordered his army to attack two of the neighboring countries. Finally, Superman responded, along with Superboy and Supergirl. Zod and Superman faced off, Zod delivering a punch so hard that it broke Superman's jaw. However, their battle was stopped owing to the arrival of Imperiex, the destroyer of galaxies. Druzad 2. Druzad 2 from New Earth, which was basically the mainstream reality of the DC multiverse between 1986 and 2011, was the leader of military defenses for the Kryptonian Science Council. When Jor-El spread the alarm of the soon-to-die Krypton, the Council considered him a traitor for spreading unnecessary panic and violating their preserved beliefs. Accompanied by Ursa, Zod led a raid on Jor-El's laboratory, where he and his mentor, Non, were experimenting. However, soon after their arrest, Zod realized that Jor-El was right and the Science Council had been lying to everybody. He next allied with Non, but before the two could do much, the Science Council intervened and performed a lobotomy on Non, making him a mindless savage. This was enough to infuriate Zod, and they swore revenge on the Council. He rescued Jor-El and sought to attack the Council, but Jor-El was a man who had no intention of solving matters with violence. Zod was arrested, and Jor-El used every last bit of his sources in the Council to grant him banishment instead of death. The Council made Jor-El sentence Zod, Ursa, and Non to the Phantom Zone, which further made Zod burn in rage and hatred for Jor-El. While they were in the Phantom Zone, Krypton was destroyed, with Kal-El being the only survivor sent to Earth. In the Phantom Zone, Zod and Ursa discovered a small fragment of Fort Roz, an old Kryptonian prison that could somehow maintain physical physical shape, Zod and Ursa went inside and were able to produce a son. The son was named Lor-Zod, and Ursa raised him with a highly abusive Zod who considered him nothing more than a way of escaping from the Phantom Zone. Over the next few years, Zod finally managed to escape, and upon knowing that Jor-El's son was on Earth, he planned to eliminate the House of El bloodline. Lor-Zod and Ursa arrived on Earth, following which Zod unleashed a massive attack on Metropolis. He exiled Superman to the Phantom Zone and planned on terraforming Earth into the new Krypton. However, Superman managed to escape from the Phantom Zone and made an alliance with Lex Luthor, with whom he sent Zod back into the Phantom Zone. Later, when a new Krypton was formed, Zod, Ursa, and Non were pardoned of their crimes by the new leader, Allura N'Zeh, and brought back from the Phantom Zone. Since then, he reclaimed his duties as the General and continued serving Krypton as a hero. At some point, Zod was attacked and severely injured by General Sam Lane. Zod later planned to declare war on Earth in response to Lane's operations. He led 80,000 Kryptonians to wreak havoc on Earth, at the end of which they were once again exiled to a newly created Phantom Zone by Superman and Lor-Zod. Dru-Zod 2 was introduced in Action Comics issue 845, released in January 2007. Admiral Zod. Next, we have the ancestor of Dru-Zod 2, who was showcased in 2007's Superman issue 669. Created by Kurt Busiek and Rick Leonardi, the character was known as Admiral Zod, or Dru-Zod 1. Long back, he led a fleet of warships in search of conquering potential planets. After traveling through galaxies, his capital ship, aka Doomsday, crashed and landed on primitive Earth in a spot that eventually became a part of Texas in the modern world. His ship remained buried for years until Lex Luthor discovered it. Zod Earth 50. From creators Christos N. Gage and Iban Coelho, Zod of Earth 50 was introduced in the digital first series of Justice League Beyond 2.0, issue 4, released in September 2013. This version of Zod was the son of Lord Superman and Wonder Woman. He was actually a clone created to establish peace with Earth after years of war. At some point, Brainiac stole him and placed him under the care of Jax-Ur, a Kryptonian renegade who raised him as his own son. When Jax-Ur realized that Zod could control almost all machinery outside the Phantom Zone, he lured Superman into the zone and took control of all of his robots. When Jax began beating his son, he was stopped by Superman and made to activate a self-destruct sequence for the robots. Justice League Unlimited managed to open a portal to the zone and send the robots to explode, and the battle between Superman and Jax began. It did not take much to subdue him, following which he had to admit defeat. Superman took custody of Zod and eventually made him his protege, Superboy. Superman, Earth 15. On Earth 15, which was a relatively peaceful reality, Zod was the Superman and protector of Earth. There is not much known as to how this version of Zod arrived on Earth from Krypton, and he was showcased as a retired hero investing time with his family. Created by Paul Dini and Justin Gray, the character was introduced in 2007's Countdown issue 30, when the Monitor brought Donna Troy, Jason Todd, and Kyle Rayner into this reality in search of Ray Palmer. Zod, aka Superman, assisted them and helped them. He scanned the entire globe, only to be informed that Ray could not be found anywhere. Zod's wife was about to give birth to a half-human child, and he was hoping to live a happy life in the Fortress of Solitude, but was killed by an alternate version of Superboy Prime. Superboy Prime was hunting down all the alternate versions of Superman, and he ruthlessly killed Zod by puncturing his chest with a shard of kryptonite. He then killed his wife and unborn child and proceeded to attack the Justice League satellite, along with everyone inside. General Zod, Supergirl Season 2. Supergirl Season 2 had its own version of General Zod and was showcased in the grand finale episode titled Nevertheless, She Persisted. Zod had been showcased as an evil megalomaniac from Krypton who died in 2018. In the episode, Zod was shown to be in Superman's hallucinations after Rhea infected him with silver kryptonite. The effects of the silver kryptonite made Superman insane and paranoid. He hallucinated his cousin Kara as Zod and engaged in a fearsome battle. Finally, Supergirl managed to free Superman, but she was completely exhausted in the process. Zod was later shown to have been somehow resurrected by unknown means and fighting the Legion in the 31st century. Druzod, Earth 49. Zod was also included in the infamous Injustice storyline of Earth 49. As most of you are aware, the Injustice story arc was about a deranged Superman who was tricked into killing his own wife, Lois, and yet-to-be-born child. Superman lost the connection with humanity and rose to become a dictator, designing world peace by force. The Justice League was divided between two groups of Superman and Batman. Even the popular DC villains aligned themselves with either team, and the struggle continued through the long run. When the Teen Titans came in the way of Superman, he exiled them into the Phantom Zone. Later, Batman planned on releasing them to join his side and managed to free them with the help of Plastic Man. However, while they were coming out of the Phantom Zone, Zod followed them and instantly murdered Tim Drake by shooting his heat vision through his chest. The Injustice story arc brought great losses to the world of superheroes, and even more for Batman. Dick Grayson was already dead, and Damian chose to side with Superman. When Tim Drake died, Batman was so infuriated that he retrieved his Superman Buster armor laced with kryptonite-infused fear toxin and faced Zod. When gassed with the toxins, Zod began having visuals of facing Superman, which was Batman in real life. The fight between Batman and Zod was noticed by Ra's al Ghul, who considered Zod to be a threat that needed to be eliminated immediately. He unleashed Amazo, who arrived at the fight and tore Zod's head off, killing him instantly. Batman later used Zod's heart to place in the body of Superboy, who was mortally wounded after his fight with Superman. Zod Smallville. Developed by writer-producers Alfred Goff and Miles Millar, 2001's Smallville was a decent adaptation of the DC storyline and characters revolving around Superman. Zod was also a part of the series and was introduced in Season 5, Episode 22, titled Vessel. This iteration of Zod was a major in the Kryptonian army, long before the destruction of the planet. During the war against Black Zero, the entire city of Kandor was blown up, including Zod's wife and son. During the same time, cloning experiments were conducted on Kryptonian soldiers, and Zod was also one of them. Zod begged Jor-El to include his son's DNA in the experiment, which Jor-El refused. Zod was left disappointed, and after a few years, Zod married a woman named Fiora. Unfortunately, the two of them were unable to have a child, for which they began genetic experimentation with their combined DNA and that of ferocious animals, eventually creating Davis Bloom and Doomsday. Zod eventually grew evil and launched a global war that consumed the entire Krypton with its inhabitants. Zod and his wife were soon arrested and sent to the Phantom Zone. Zod was, however, released by Clark Kent in 2006 and possessed the body of Lex Luthor until Superman confronted him and removed him from Lex's body with the help of a kryptonite crystal. He was once again banished to the Phantom Zone, where in a few years, one of the Kryptonian clones of New Krypton that was banished into the Phantom Zone merged with Zod. The clone's body had some of Superman's DNA, which helped Zod control the Phantom Zone Gateway Crystal. Zod used his newfound abilities to send Slade Wilson to Earth and get the attention of Superman, who arrived at the Phantom Zone with Oliver Queen. Zod's men took the two men hostage and fought Superman in a gladiator match. Superman was severely wounded, while Oliver faked to be siding with Zod. He tricked Zod, stole his crystal, and handed it over to Superman, who wasted no time escaping from the Phantom Zone and later destroyed the crystal to seal Zod permanently. Druzod Earth 96. Earth 96, which was the reality showcased in DC Superhero Girls TV series, had Druzod as a former Kryptonian military commander. He was introduced in DC Superhero Boys Part 1, released during 2019. Before the annihilation of planet Krypton, General Zod and his followers tried to overthrow the planet's ruling council. However, his plans were sabotaged by Allura Zor-El, and he was banished to the Phantom Zone. Allura Zor-El was the mother of Kara Zor-El, who was one of the last survivors of planet Krypton. At some point, Zod managed to escape from the Phantom Zone and arrived at Metropolis. He tried invading the city before Supergirl, along with the rest of the superhero girls and Invincibros, defeated him. Superman Earth 40. The iteration of Zod from Earth 40 was one of the best ones ever carved out. It was crafted by creators Tony Harris and Dan Jolley and introduced in the 2000s. JSA, The Liberty File Issue 2. Soon after Zod was born, he began showing psychopathic tendencies. As a child, he released a virus that decimated dozens of Kryptonians. Owing to his horrific actions and behavior, he was the first Kryptonian child to be sent to the Phantom Zone. In the year 1940, the news of Nazis working on means of teleportation was received by the American government. They too started working on the same and developed a device for the same. Unfortunately, when tested, the equipment got overheated, and instead of creating any portal, it sucked out young Zod from the Phantom Zone. Zod was cunning, and he feigned to be an amnesiac. The American government handed the child to be raised by the Kents while being supervised and monitored by the Army. He was given the name Clark Kent, and like all Kryptonians, he began developing powers under the Yellow Sun. The world had several superhuman espionage agents, and Zod was eventually trained for his role under the name Superman. His first mission was to fight Parasite and Steelwolf in Eastern Europe, along with the Bat and Clock. When Zod learned about a nuclear device that could be his weakness, he charged towards Russia to destroy it. He killed several agents and proceeded to complete his task. However, he was killed before it could be completed. General Zod, Gods and Monsters. Justice League Gods and Monsters was the 2015 animated movie and a part of the DC Universe animated original movies. Zod was shown to be the leading cause for the destruction of planet Krypton. He kept drilling the core in order to fuel his war machine, which eventually stopped the planet from surviving. He also stopped Jor-El from implanting his genetic code into Lara's egg. Just before the planet was about to explode, Zod implanted the egg with his DNA, and it left for Earth. The child's pod escaped Krypton, which exploded into nothing. True Zod, Harley Quinn. The Harley Quinn TV series, released in 2019, had its own iteration of Zod. Although there was not much about his origins or his life on Krypton, he was shown in Season 3, Episode 3, titled The 83rd Annual Villy Awards. The event was held at the Monarch Theater, where Zod could be seen interacting with Catwoman during Joker's musical performances. He was then seen sharing a table with Toyman, Killer Frost, Maxie Zeus, and Reverse Flash. Marvelous verdict. So finally, we have come to the end of the video, and we hope you have liked our content. General Zod, no matter the version, will always be one of the greatest of all DC villains. Do let us know in the comments section which iteration of Zod is your favorite, or if there's anything new that you wish DC could do with the character. Thank you for watching till the end, and stay tuned for the next marvelous video.